Glasshouse listeners, I got a confession. Years ago, Lynley and I went to the beach, and I got on one of those kicks where I was going to get in great shape. I had a book with me called Body for Life. Have you heard of this book? Of course you have.
I've heard this book because you have it at
right.
home.
So I read this whole fitness book on at the beach, and there's this picture of the guy who wrote the book, like posing, like
He's a bodybuilder.
he's a bodybuilder.
Like he was in the bodybuilding uniform.
And I wrote undefeated beefcake because there was a guy in the gym that had a T-shirt that was he literally said that.
Yeah.
So I was like, in 1 year, I put the date. In 1 year, I'm going to look like this guy.
Yeah.
I was so determined. I believed it at that moment.
I know you did. And I brought that book out on that 1 year anniversary, and I was like, here you go, undefeated beefcake. This is you.
So this episode is for all of you out there that always dreamed of being in great physical shape, but you just have really struggled to get your act together. We have some amazing guests that are going to talk about physical fitness and how to stay healthy in ministry. Welcome to the Glass House, Lynley. Today we have in the studio some good friends.
Yes, in person.
So this is Mark and Christine Satterfield. Guys, introduce yourselves a little bit.
Yeah, Mark and Christine, we're Nashville natives. We got two boys, Eli and Brock, and we're excited to be here.
And you're a pastor.
Yes.
Tell us about your church.
Yeah, Glade Church. We're in Mount Juliet, about 30 minutes east of here, and it's a wonderful church. We love it. It's the land between the lakes, I believe, is what that area is like. We got a lot of lake people.
Very
and,
nice.
We love it.
Very
love
nice.
It. It's good.
Nice.
Are you both Nashville natives?
We are.
That's
we
so
grew up about
rare.
a mile and a half from each
I
other.
know. What about that?
I mean, that never happens.
Yeah.
I know.
They're high
Interesting.
school sweethearts.
Oh,
Yeah.
We are.
that's fun.
Yes.
It doesn't happen very often these days.
High school sweethearts. We survived long distance in college.
Okay.
And then we both worked at Lifeway for a season.
Very
And
nice.
so what about that?
We are excited to have you guys on the show about a topic that we feel like is very relevant. Lifeway Research did a big study of pastors and all of the needs they have in pastoral ministry. We were surprised by a couple of things. One was the number of pastors who expressed dissatisfaction with their bodies. Having a hard time taking care of myself. I'm overcommitting constantly. I have very little time to work out or exercise or eat right. I'm constantly going to things where there's food,
Yes.
fried food.
Oh, man.
So I'm just starting to feel less and less confident about the shape I'm in. In fact, Lynley, you have a couple of stats there that you're going to share from
Yeah.
the...
Yeah, from this article, it says 59% of pastors say they struggle with consistently exercising, 49% with eating right, and 45% with consistently resting. So,
And so legend has it that you two work out together.
Yes.
which is so crazy because he and I would kill each other.
Yeah, that would
working out.
not be a good situation.
That's our bonding time. It's our hobby time.
It
tell
really
us-
is. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
How did that
Yeah.
start?
Well, I think we both grew up playing sports, and part of my story is I can remember going with my dad over my grandparents' house, and he'd be pounding the weights in their garage, and so like it was just kind of my environment, my world growing up. And Christine has always been very athletic and strong. We just thinking about when we were working out at the Y during the summertime when we were home from college. Yeah, and I think I don't know if that kicked it off for us or what, but we enjoyed it together.
We did, yeah.
What do you do together? Let's discuss this.
Yeah,
Like,
what's the program we're on?
What
Okay.
kind of workout do we do here?
So we lift 3 days a week. We lift weights, right? Early in the morning. Typically, that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we'll go for long walks in our neighborhood. And so that's very much our structure.
Yes.
Right?
And if we need a day off, Thursday is definitely a day off. Sometimes if we need to sleep a little later, if Wednesday night, we tend to close the place down. Mark definitely closes church down on
man,
Wednesday nights.
Wednesday
Yeah.
is a
Oh, that's
long
true.
day.
You're just worked up because you've been talking to people and
Yeah,
having...
so Thursday's
Yeah.
iffy.
Yes.
Depending on
Yes.
how you feel. Got it.
So for the listener, though, that has younger kids, because your kids are a little bit older now, you can leave them at home probably. What did you guys do when your kids were younger?
Yeah.
Well, don't you guys work out in your garage?
So we have changed things throughout the years
Okay.
completely, yes.
Which I think that'll be one of the things we talk about here is like just
Oh,
going
okay.
with the flow,
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm
not
wondering.
being just locked in on something forever.
Yes, when I was pregnant, when we had little kids, I was starting to work from home, but Mark was going to seminary and
It was
took a
rough.
huge pay cut. It was a tough time in life, and no sleep, sleep deprivation. We had somebody at our church who owned a CrossFit gym, and she allowed me to do the child care there for a
nice.
free membership.
Okay.
And I'm one who I like to gain lots of weight when I'm pregnant. I gained 65 pounds each time. And but working out there, I started 6 weeks after our youngest was born, and it was exciting to me because I could, lift heavy things and push my body in ways that I hadn't since college. And so it was fun in that regard. But they had a nutrition seminar during that time that really made an impact in my life. It made me view food differently. Instead of something that was bad, I shouldn't eat things, I looked at food. I looked at real food and how it fueled our body. But so for a season there, we were working out at CrossFit.
Yeah, I can remember Christine would come home and she'd be like, "You have got to check this out." And I was so intimidated because CrossFit was fairly new.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was
It's like throwing big
It's like
tires
flipping
around.
tires.
Yes.
You're just like, I just
you don't
don't
do in
know.
life.
I don't know. But what I saw physically, I saw such a physical transformation with Christine. I was like, I got to check this out. So they would have these free weekends. And so I go in there on a Saturday morning, and as I walk in, I'm like just getting a lay of the land, and I can just see in my peripheral vision, I can see they're doing pull-ups, and I hate pull-ups.
I
Like
hate
pull-ups
pull-ups.
are the worst, It's like man card, turn that in.
Yeah.
And so, but I see this lady doing just getting after it, like with the kipping style pull-ups, and I kind of look over, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to do this? And I see that it's Christine. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Christine's like repping out 20 of these pull-ups. And I'm like, okay, I got some work to do.
Wait, you just said they're like kipping whatever. Are there different kinds of pull-ups? Because like they all just are terrible to me.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, I totally agree with that. There is how would you describe it?
Kipping is much easier. It's not a strict pull-up. You're not pulling your whole body weight up. You still are, but you're using momentum to kind of help you. It's
Okay.
an easier,
I just
in
like
my
to
opinion,
say I like
pull-up.
a pull-up.
Right.
I don't like pull-ups.
Right.
Yes.
One feels great.
Right. Yeah. Just to make
I
sure
just
you
like
can do
to
that
hang
one.
from a pull-up bar and stretch out my shoulders
That's great too.
because I can't go.
It's
I
a
can't.
great stretch.
I can't pull up. But okay.
Yes.
That
Anyway.
was a tough time for us. I was in seminary, and I was on staff at a church, and it was my first role on staff, and just trying to figure that out. We had 2 little ones, and I can remember years later, I think Christine woke up. She slept in one Saturday morning, and she woke up. She was like, I feel like I finally caught up on my sleep. And I'm thinking like from the last couple of days or whatever. And she's like talking the last 5 years, And so just that rhythm, especially with little ones and trying to make time, is hard,
Yeah.
And so we were trying to figure it out. I feel like
Yes.
we were constantly changing back then.
Well, let me ask this question. I think a lot of people in ministry use the excuse, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
My schedule's erratic.
Yeah.
Funerals, weddings. I can't ever get into that rhythm that normal people get into. So
Yeah.
what do you say to ministry families out there that are just like every week looks different? It's hard to put things like regimented into a schedule.
Yeah. What I would suggest is evaluate your week and look for pockets within your week where you have downtime. For me, what I've recognized is just in my weekly schedule, early in the mornings, and I'm not an early morning guy. I am now, but I could easily get back in that routine of staying up late and sleeping in a little bit. My best time for self-care is between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. Nobody's really contacting me between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. So what I do is we work out. We have our time with the Lord. We do things for us in that time slot. And then I would even say Mondays, I rarely get brought into a situation unless it's just an absolute crisis or somebody's passed away on a Monday, because everybody's trying to get their week going. So what I do on Monday is my sermon prep. Now, I'm a Monday guy. Not everybody's a Monday guy. I know there's some pastors that are like, I take my day off on Monday because I just need that. And I totally understand that. For me, I'm the exact opposite. Monday, I eat that frog when it comes to the sermon prep. I try to get the majority of that sermon prep done on Monday and then let it marinate for the rest of the week. Because Mondays, I found I can control more so. The rest of the week, as it unfolds, there are things that pop up. And but we've been very structured, and I'm naturally, and I know some guys are not like this, I'm naturally very structured. The more structured you can be.
Some guys.
You and I are
Yeah.
pretty much the opposite person.
Okay, yeah. So I would say look for those pockets where you can do that. I just happen to find it's usually between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has it ever worked for you? Sorry, to not work out in the morning, like evenings?
Very
kind.
rarely.
Yeah.
if we say, oh, sometimes things do come up and we
Yeah.
can't work out in the morning. It is very difficult to work out
Yes.
after a full day.
Once the day starts.
Yes.
Oh man,
But,
yeah.
but we were talking about during our time at Lifeway, there were guys, we were, the building at that time was close to the YMCA, and they would go at lunchtime and work out. They were very consistent, very regimented.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how you have to be very purposeful when you go work out during lunch. You can't just dilly-dally around and
Right.
take a long
Yeah.
time.
Right.
And I imagine with those guys, that's what they found. That was their time. They wanted to get it in, so they made it happen. I think being intentional about that, if you're really serious about taking care of yourself, you're going to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
We worked out, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we worked out in the afternoon because I had the day before, it was so long, and we just had a lot going on at church.
Yeah.
And so I think we worked out at like 3 p.m. I could not go to bed that night. So it was like midnight.
still
I was like,
jamming.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure it was a pre-workout drink, energy drink,
That's
and some
really
other
good.
stuff like that.
Well, maybe you guys can counsel us today. We are polar opposites with working out. Lynley is very regimented, very consistent, very disciplined. Like that's all of her
Yeah.
spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
I am not. So this is a constant point of, I wouldn't say friction.
Not
But
anymore. I mean,
discussion.
I think it has been a source of friction for us in the past, but
She worries about me. Like I'm not, even
Well-
though I'm not an overweight guy, like I have a lot of stress in my job. And
well, that's
like,
kind of the point of this conversation, in my opinion, is that we've had at least 3 or 4 people we've known recently, pastors, who have had heart attacks. And you would look
Yeah.
at them, they're not overweight people. They don't seemingly have unhealthy eating patterns,
true.
but it's the stress of it.
Yeah.
And so for me, he has some genetics of like things that we all do that make me nervous. And so I'm kind of like, I'm not asking you to be a beefcake, because he gets mad. He's like, I'm just never going to be, he's like, I'm never going to
I'm
be.
a swimmer's
Yeah.
build, okay?
Yeah. So
A slightly overweight swimmer.
actually, I was just talking to a Lifeway employee because our son hurt his knee, and I was like, we're like tennis, golf, swim people. We're just tall and lean, kind of. Well, I'm not tall, but
Yeah.
Anyway, my point to that is, it makes me nervous for the health of it. I'm like, I don't care about what you look like. I mean, you're 47 years old. Like, we've been married 23 years, but I really do want you to be around, if at all possible, that you can control. I know
Yeah.
things happen.
I
So-
can guarantee you there's a pastor's wife listening to this, like her husband needs this show because he's in that cycle of not he's not self-care, he's getting more and more out of shape, he's getting more stressed at his job.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, you can talk about coffee recently. I mean, that's a big thing for you.
yeah, so I have had a lifelong love for coffee. I mean, for 25 years I've woken up every day and had coffee, and recently I just came to the realization that it was controlling my life. Like I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and the first thing my body said was coffee. Even to the point where I'd have to like think the night before, like, how am I going to get to coffee in the morning? Like
It was actually at like 4. I mean, it had gotten to this point of,
I wasn't
earlier
sleeping
and
well,
earlier.
and then even in non-stressful days, I noticed like I wouldn't go into a meeting without a cup of coffee, and like it was just caffeine
Yeah.
all day long. So I just quit like 45 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And I have
Cold
I have
turkey.
really
Yeah.
felt way better.
Yeah.
Like I miss
Wow.
coffee, but I
not
feel a
surprised.
lot better.
Yes.
It
I'm
was a fun
sleeping
few
better.
days.
Yes,
my
that would
goodness,
be
I
so
can't imagine.
difficult.
Yeah.
We did it. We quit coffee for probably 8 months. We missed
Yeah.
the social aspect of it
I
more
Yes.
than
know.
anything.
That's what I
He
told
is.
them. I said, I think I'm going to come back to coffee only when I'm meeting someone for coffee, because it just feels
Yes.
weird to like,
Yeah. And then you have that
Yes.
first sip, you're going to be jacked.
I know.
But I think what's taught me is just how our body learns habits. And your body begins to tell you, like, okay, it's time for sugar, it's time for caffeine, or it's time to sit down and watch 3 hours of Netflix. Like,
Oh, yeah.
overcoming those habits is really hard once you've got them ingrained. So, for people in ministry, Mark, I don't know if you deal this with your staff. Like, how do you encourage your staff to take care of themselves? Is this a part of the conversation?
It is. We a couple years ago, we went through a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality,
Yeah.
which was really good. We brought in one of our key counselors, and we talked about it as a staff. Like, how do you care for yourself on an emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical level? And so staff, I would be real careful. I'm always careful with staff. Some of our staff, they'll ask, like, hey, okay, how do you do this on the nutritional side? And then others, they don't. And you just know, all right, I'm not having that conversation with them. But I think with behavior over time, they see the consistency in your life, and then they just see, I think the byproduct of that is, okay, that person's a lot of fun to be around. They're joyful, they're happy, they're very productive. Like, they're all the things that your behavior is showing that it's all the things that they want to have. And I really do thinking about your life in this realm, okay, how am I doing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? People are drawn to that when you have those things. I want to be careful, not that you have those things under control, but you're very cognizant of those areas. And listen, it's, one of the things we were talking about coming over here is it's a constant work. So we don't have this whipped, like we're constantly adjusting and talking about. I mean, the other last week, Wednesday night was so long. Wednesday was so long. Wednesday night I came home and I was like, I probably crushed 1,500 calories in like 5 minutes. I was like,
famished.
stress eating, and it wasn't even that stressful of a day. It's like I finished and I was like, what was so because I know this about myself. Wednesday nights and there's on Thursdays, I can totally blow it on the nutritional side. And why is that?
When you're tired.
I'm tired. I'm stressed out. I want to veg, And so last Wednesday night I caught myself and I'm like, man, why? It wasn't even that stressful of a day. I'm just tired. And so
you bring up a good point. Oftentimes ministry is just like this chronic stress, like nothing crisis related, but just busy.
Right.
Busy. Like you run from meeting to meeting, person to person. You try to walk down a hall, you stop and talk to 5 people, which is part of what you love.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're just relationally, emotionally zapped.
That's right.
When you're hungry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you want to go
it plays out
find
that
something
way.
easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And not everybody's like that. I think there are a lot of people that are like that. They're going to find that what they're looking for through food.
Yeah.
How can I unwind from the day? I think there's vices. I think there's things there in our lives that we easily gravitate towards where we're like, okay, that's going to be my thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that people at your church know that this is a value for you guys, probably with your kids. Churches are notorious for serving sugary snacks in their Sunday morning services, stuff like that. I mean, how does it play out for you guys in the church? Or does it? Do you leave this just like, hey, this is our value, but we're going to let everybody else make their own decisions?
Yes, I'm not really one to force my thoughts and opinions on someone
Right,
else
I
because
get
they
that.
may or may not be right.
Right.
But as I started to learn more about nutrition and how food fuels our body, it did give me a different perspective, especially with kids. So I want, we tell our kids to eat their vegetables like most people probably do, but then it did open my eyes to the fact that we give preschoolers suckers and goldfish, and we're just constantly reaffirming their behavior by giving them processed food, not necessarily real food.
Yeah.
Lynley has a story on that. I'm sorry. When we were in Denver, we had to learn about Vacation Bible School.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so in Denver, self-care is a really big deal. It's a value.
Nutritional. I mean, nutrition is very, you hear people talk about like granola, crunchy mountain people. I mean, and I don't like that saying because I'm like, they're just healthy. I mean, they're just cognizant of their health. And so, we would get all these ideas for snacks for VBS. And it was like, hey, why don't you put some chocolate chips in a donut and make it look like a snowman or, different things. And I thought, I was the director of kids ministry there, and I thought, I'm going to get killed if I serve these things here.
Yes.
So we had to be very careful with it. And also, I think your own personal experience. So I've told this story before, but we had a couple of kids there who had pretty severe allergies or celiac, but not knowing about that at that time, I didn't really take it seriously. I was just ignorant to it. Well, then one of our kids was diagnosed with celiac, and then you realize like how you're alienating people by food in so many different regards. I mean, especially like youth ministries where they always have pizza party and donut parties and all that. Well, there's always 5 or 6 kids who are like, I can't have that. So, I mean, it really does take learning and studying to begin to understand how food affects us.
Different people value health. And in Denver, the culture was very much like biking, cycling, getting outside. And so nutrition was just part of that.
Yes.
So in the South, it's been different. Like people are much more free with fried foods and sweets and all that.
I mean, and I love fried chicken. It's my favorite. So I'm on both sides of this.
I can remember a few years ago, and I could still get off on the subject with Christine. She's educated me quite a bit just on the whole food thing. But it really surfaced with our oldest. We would see him responding to certain foods, and we knew, like, he's allergic, or he was allergic to peanut butter and eggs. But then there was just other things, just with candy. When you get into the specifics, like red dye, 40, and some of those other things, you could see how they would respond to it in a very negative way. And so that opened my eyes. And then Christine just continued to educate me on, okay, how do we select foods that are best for our family, and especially when it comes to like one ingredient foods, and so we really try our best to do that. Now, I'm one who grew up by putting a cup of sugar with a lemonade pack, and we would crush a bag of Doritos, and like it was like, I'm fine, right? Like we would slice the bologna, and so it's just like we grew up just fine. But I do think there are some things that are different with food today than 40 years ago.
I understand.
Yeah.
There definitely are. So we have 2 teenagers practically now, and usually you hear, "Oh, how do you feed those teenagers? They eat so much food." And because we don't have bags of chips and cookies and candy and all kinds of things, they pretty much eat real food, and they eat a normal amount of food. They're not eating us out of house and home like you did
because it's actually filling them up.
Right, yeah.
Filling them up and giving them the nutrients they need. Now, that could change at any point in time, but I have just found that to be an interesting case study on how food affects our bodies.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of weekends ago, we had a big student event on our side of town, and they were gone for a couple of days. It's a Big D Now weekend. And, of course, they ate what was in the homes. And what was interesting coming out of that, and they enjoyed it. But when they got back home, they did not feel well. And then in a couple of days, they actually got sick. And so for me, it's like, all right, that makes sense. Because of the food, their bodies aren't used to it, and they just took it all in. They embraced it all. And so we have noticed that. And it's been really good. We've had great conversations with them about it. They know it, just like we all know it. If you put some veggies here and some cookies right next to it, I know which one I'm going to be prone to take, and so.
I recently heard a health professional talking about 2-degree shifts. And he was talking about how we hear an episode like this and we think, okay, I'm going to go join the gym. I'm going to hit it 5 days a week, give myself 2 days off. And then 3 weeks later, it's like they can't keep up with it. So how would you encourage, if you're one of the 59% out there that really struggles, it's not part of their natural bent, how do you take some steps?
Yeah.
Like, how would you encourage a guy out there that's in ministry? He's out of shape. He knows he needs to do something about it. His wife's on his case. Or also just a pastor's wife who feels like she's caught in the rhythm of ministry. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Christine, jump in there.
Well, we live by the compound effect. I mean, it's a big part of how we live life. So that's similar to the 2-degree shifts. It's just how one choice impacts the rest of your choices, and it can grow exponentially. And I always say, last year we worked out at a group fitness place where people would come in, and you could tell they were ready. It was Monday morning. They were about to change their life. And I would always give them, just as a person there, not as a trainer, but I would just say, go halfway today. Don't push yourself so that tomorrow you can't walk.
Right.
Because then you're not coming back.
Yeah.
That's what I do every time.
Yes.
He comes home every time. He's like, I killed that. And I'm like, ugh, that means you're not going for like 3 days.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes. And then also, we enjoy lifting heavy things. That is something we enjoy, but not everyone does.
That's right.
If you like playing tennis and playing tennis together, do that. Or, our walks are easy. They're easy. We're just walking around the neighborhood, but it's an hour of uninterrupted time where we're catching up on the day. It's the only time we have that we're not needed by someone else. And so, that's good for mental health and physical health.
Yeah, we really enjoy that. Yeah.
Especially when the weather gets nice.
Oh, man.
Which is happening.
Yes.
But we'll be out there because we have the appropriate gear. We'll be out there. If that sun's out, it could be 20 degrees, and we'll do it, But a part of it is it is the compound effect. Like we are farther along in that journey where it really is a part of our lives. I would say to the individuals trying to figure it out, Christine and I have friends that it's like if they get excited about some new hobby, they go to the store and they buy all the gear, and then they're selling it 6 months later.
I would totally be that person.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we had talked about. Like, we don't want anybody to feel like that may be listening to this. They're just trying to figure out, okay, what is one small step? I think it's important to know where you are. So an example of that, I think about, okay, what kind of movement, working out, how am I sleeping, and what am I eating? Like, first, understand what's going on there. And then take one small step. James Clear, I'd put this down. Atomic Habits was a book that I read a couple years ago that just
really good.
really helped me
I'm
out.
applying all of it.
He says, changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years. I just think that's so true. So you have to come to a realization that you're playing the long game.
Yeah.
Right. I think about this from a ministry perspective. I want, Lord willing, I will be pastoring in 20 years. In 20 years, I'll be 66. And it may look different than what I'm doing right now, but I want to play the long-term game. And I think guys that are in ministry, it's hard. We just see that it's hard to make it. And I want to finish well.
Yeah, I understand.
And so if you're not taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
One small step would be just go for a walk for 30 minutes. Like just something that simple. It seems so insignificant, but what you're trying to do is build a rhythm, build something new into your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's one easy thing that you can do.
Our next door neighbor is probably in his 60s. Every day at 4 o'clock, he goes on a walk.
30
It's
minutes.
to the front of the neighborhood and back, 30 minutes. But he looks trim, healthy. He's always in a good mood. He's outside. Outside does wonders for us
Yeah.
also.
Yes. For sure.
Yeah.
But I also think, in the church world, we care about discipleship. We walk along someone as they become a more mature believer. And so there's no harm in finding a discipler or a coach to help us for a limited amount of time or for a long time in
Take
our
some
health
steps.
journey.
Yeah.
Because they're an expert in
Yeah.
it. So they can give you
Yeah.
what you need specifically.
Yeah, I know churches can be very different. I tend to tell on myself a lot in sermons, and what I've learned is that our church responds so well to me just saying, "Man, this is where I blew it. Here's what's going on." And I would encourage a pastor that's looking for that support and accountability. I just tend to believe the best in the body of Christ, that if there's something that's being communicated, I need to take better care of myself.
Yeah.
I would just assume the body of Christ would rally around that pastor and say, yes, definitely. And right now, in our society and culture, there is this pressure of self-care. Like there's so much focus on that I could see some pastors being like, I don't want to even come across that way. But support and accountability in that space, not only does it create a better culture with that pastor and his family, but it also is going to create a better culture within that church family as well.
So when Ben was pastoring in Jackson, Tennessee, he and the music minister would walk a lot for meetings. And so when you talked about walking alongside of, even that as a step for ministry, like if you have a standing meeting, walk and have that meeting a little bit, walk around the parking lot of the church, whatever, just to get some fresh air, move your body just a little bit. Because sometimes,
Yeah.
you're just inside all day long, meeting after meeting.
And I would say since Lifeway's moved to a remote workforce, like we come into this building for meetings, but we work largely from home. Like I felt healthier. Like you can, between meetings, go outside, enjoy some fresh air, try to build that into your day. But to your point about the compound effect, I would say like since I've stopped drinking coffee, I have felt much stronger to say no to other things.
Yes.
So it's like it gave me confidence to say, okay, if I can quit that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I had a pastor years ago, mentor, who told me, he said, you're always going to have staff issues, but try to deal with them one by one. Like in other words, don't try to work on 2 staff members at once. Just work on one. And I have found the same principle like with fitness. It's like just find one thing that you can start with. Say, I'm going to deal with this. I don't have it all figured out in these other areas. I'm going to deal with this. Like, so for me, it was caffeine intake.
Yes.
And since then, I've been going to the gym a little more. I still don't like it, but I go.
You do?
And Lynley's-
Irregularly, like as far as it'll be one morning and then one night, but it's fine.
No,
You
they'll
should find
say,
something you love to do.
I
doesn't have
do
to be the
love
gym.
walking, and we have 2 golden retrievers, and I walk them all the time. So but I know, like, I'm 47 years old. I have to do more than just walk.
We'll walk
wish that was
leisurely. He's like, let's just because
kinda
one of our
casually
dogs
walk.
stops at every bush to smell it, and I'm like, that's not a walk. Like,
Yeah.
he's just using the restroom.
I know, but I'm not in my 20s and 30s anymore. I'm realizing more and more that I have to do. I can't do everything I used to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to take it seriously.
So I have a question. So I'll just read it. Basically, in a day when people pick and choose what biblical issues are important, what do you think about passages related to taking care of your body and the sin of gluttony? Because, like, for me personally, I'm a really justice-oriented person, and I know that lots of churches are fighting over titling of their ministry staff and all these things. And I'm like, hey, there are lots of passages about self-care, about gluttony, and we have a lot of overweight pastors walking around out there. And I'm not judging them. I'm just saying, like, why are we picking and choosing these topics that we're going to take on? So I just opened it up for.
So there it is.
Yeah.
So there you go. Like, take that one.
I do think you're right. Right now, and it's probably always been this way. I think social media heightens all the things too.
Yes.
But we don't talk about this one specifically, and the reason why is because there's so many that are extremely overweight. There was a guy who preached on this at a pastor's conference many, many years ago who was overweight, and he was basically confessing his own sin and was asking others to join in. And I can remember that particular pastor's conference because I thought he was so bold in doing so. We know Paul, there's a couple of passages I thought about with this in 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy. Paul talks about the importance of taking care of yourself. He says, don't you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? You're not your own, for you were bought at a price, so glorify God with your body. And so I do think about that. Now, we can easily take that to an extreme, but right now we have so many that are not doing anything in this space, and they really should, for their own care, for their family, for their church. And then Paul says to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, he says, training the body has limited benefit, but godliness is beneficial in every way. So even though it's a limited benefit, it's still good to do, and we should be doing it. And I think with that, as you take care of yourself, the godliness piece there also begins to rise up. People pay attention. They see that. I also think our responsibility to stand before the congregation and deliver the word and to speak into the lives of people, I think there's got to be some level of you caring for yourself.
There's a credibility issue.
Right, there is. And so I think that's extremely important. And so I just happen to be on the end of the spectrum where I have to keep it in check because I have that obsessive personality where I can go overboard with it. And so, and I think that's where we're really careful about how we talk about it with people in our own church.
Yeah.
I could easily talk on this subject, but we want to be careful in that space.
Yeah. And anything we value more than God is a sin. So it could be gluttony from the sense of eating too much, but also on the flip side, trying to get too skinny or caring about our looks more than we care about sharing about the gospel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So I have a couple of practical questions.
Yes.
All right. So you guys have made your workout schedule. Sunday afternoon, you got the whole week planned. And then Sunday night, a couple reaches out to you guys and say, we're really having problems. Could we meet early in the morning?
Yeah.
Like, there's always somebody wanting whatever time you set aside. There's always somebody in the church that wants that time. How do you guys protect it, or what rules do you have around that?
So in the morning between 5 and 8:30, we're very guarded.
So only in extreme situations do you.
Yeah.
And they probably don't want to meet at 5 a.m.
Right. Yeah. I think
If they
so.
did.
It's a safe time.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a
They
lot
did.
of guys that try to get me early coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before their workday because that's convenient for them.
Yes.
Yeah. I think this is where it's helpful. I know not everybody has an assistant, but my assistant knows that time is she's not scheduling time during that. And most people don't want to meet that early anyway. I think in 14 years of ministry, I've had 2 crisis moments that happened between, one was at 4 a.m. and the other one was at 6 a.m.
Okay. So you've communicated this to your assistant, to people around you. This is a very important time. Do not book anything in there unless it's life or death.
But
Yeah.
I think that's an important statement in that accountability is everything. And so even if a pastor doesn't have an assistant, he likely has a spouse, a teenager, somebody that he could say, I really want to make a change here and I need someone to help me. But they have to humble themselves. And it could be the wife needing that from the husband. I mean, it's both ways.
Yeah.
But I think that it's an interesting addition there is that like you've let people know these aren't part of my work hours. Like these are personal
That's good.
time.
And it's
And it
true.
actually increases my productivity, and I believe it helps me tremendously to be a better pastor.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
You know?
All right, second question. You're invited over to a new church member's house. You're excited to get to know these folks. They have the most unhealthy food on the table. There's no options.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do?
Oh man. Yeah.
We eat it.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yes,
Yeah. Now the difference is I will eat too much and Christine will do just the right amount. And
Just
so,
to not be
her
rude.
discipline is always a notch above mine. And so, we will.
So
We
you
don't
try
wanna
to
be,
guard portion size.
Yeah, portion size issue right here. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I will go to town, and then once I do, it's like, where's the dessert? Let's break out all the other stuff. And Christine's like, what are you doing? And so,
Well, there are, this past Christmas, we had
oh
a
man.
Christmas party every other day.
We went to
Yes.
8 Christmas parties.
All
Yes.
sweet.
Plus our
Yes.
normal, family gatherings
Yes.
and everything. But,
Yeah.
I mean, usually there is something healthy that you can have. And so, I mean, there was one place I was like, Mark, just eat, load up on the vegetables that they have and get some protein. And then if there's one other thing you want to put on your plate, do that. But you don't even have to finish your plate. You can, normally I don't want to waste food at all. But if there's something that, you just need to fill up your plate with things that look healthy that you
Yeah.
can eat.
Is he
Christine's so good
receptive
at
to
that.
that? Like, is he receptive to you saying, hey, Mark, eat some of these vegetables? Because Ben would be like, hey, Lynley, I'm going to kill this dessert right here. Like,
Hey, it's all we got.
Well,
You
I
gotta be
don't do it.
respectful.
No, she's really great
don't do it
about
in a
creating,
bossy way,
she's
no.
reminding me of the game plan.
But you're
we're about go
receptive to
there.
it.
Oh, I listen to it, but then I derail at some point. Yeah.
But you don't get upset with her if she does give you some advice.
You'd have to answer
No,
that.
well, I don't just give advice for no reason.
Yeah.
You asked me at that particular.
Yeah.
for
Usually
that
I'm
particular
telling on
event.
myself. We're getting back in the car and we're heading back home. I'm like, I blew it.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
just like, man, I'm sorry, And she's like,
You gotta go home and go for
Right.
a walk.
We do blow it, and we're not.
Yeah.
We eat lots. We enjoy.
Okay,
activities.
so you eat it. All right,
Yes,
third
but-
question.
Hold on, let me tell you this.
Okay.
Just so keeping it real in here. I was on staff at a church for 6 years, and I led that church through 2 interims. The first interim was about 22 months. I cut my teeth on church leadership in this particular situation. I gained, at that church, I gained 25 pounds.
Really?
Yes. And so my spots were Payway, Chewy's, and this chicken wing place called Maniacs. And it was like anytime I was stressed, I was going to those places. And so even at Chewy's, you can crush those chips,
Oh,
right?
they're so good.
And
Oh.
what's the
green,
sauce?
the green dip.
I love
that,
chips
oh,
and
it's
queso.
But
so
then I
good.
would get the Elvis Presley, and so it's the chips, Elvis
The
Presley.
big as your face burrito.
Oh,
That's
man.
It, yeah.
Oh,
Crush
guys, I'm
it.
hungry. Come
I know.
on.
Crush it, and then look over at Christine, and I'm like, "Are you going to finish that soup?" I'm just like, just constantly. And so, anyway, that's always been my battle. But when we were wrapping up our season at that particular church, I didn't know. Like it just happened over time, right? It wasn't like overnight. It came on me, and I was like, "Oh man, I need to get back in it." And so, over the last 10, 15 years, I would say, it's not like we're just crushing it and things are getting better and better. It's really
It's
down.
encouraging
working
that
at
you
it.
did have a season where you weren't good at it. Because I think a lot of times, like in my personality, I'm like, I'm just not good at it.
Yeah.
So, like, some people are just born to be really good.
yeah.
But I think everybody has their seasons where they're well behaved and others
Mm-hmm.
when they're not. Here's my last question I have for you guys. On an average day when you're going to the office and you got back-to-back meetings, it's going to be a busy day. Like, what are some nutritional tips you guys have learned? Like, how do you eat well?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, just little things you've learned. Like, do you cut up all your vegetables on Sunday night? Like, how do you do it?
We do meal prep, and so when we go to the store, which we go to Costco, and
Do you go together?
we
Oh, he said we. I didn't know. Okay.
we have recently sometimes, but oftentimes she just doesn't let me go.
Okay.
She gets it, and so.
Okay.
But we'll prep. I think the biggest thing for me is if I have meal prep my food, and this requires discipline. If I do this the night before, then the next day I stick to that game plan. If I don't meal prep the night before and I'm just going in, I'm like, well, I know where I'm going for lunch or whatever, I tend to derail. And so, but every time that I meal prep and we're ready and we got our game plan, we stick with it. And more often than not, I would say it's like the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. Like 80% of the time we're on it.
And what do you meal prep?
We always have some kind of meat that can be cooked easily or already is cooked. And then frozen fruit is the easiest thing ever. So he just pours it in a container and takes it to work. The fruit gives you the sweetness, but it has all the fiber. And so, I mean, it's good. So I wouldn't necessarily say you take vegetables to work.
I don't
It's
like
just
vegetables.
easy. Yeah, it's just easy things. Or a shake. You'll do some kind of smoothie or shake and take it.
Yeah.
So it's not, we eat very simply.
We eat a lot of the same things.
We do. I don't stress out about meal planning like most moms probably do. I mean, we just eat the same thing all the time, pretty much. Just some
We do. We're very
variation of
simple.
it.
What's an
boring.
easy favorite thing that someone may like pick up from you? Like, what's a favorite meal that's easy?
Any kind of meat, so any kind of ground beef or chicken.
So you do eat meat.
Oh,
You're not anti-meat.
Oh, no.
I love meat.
Lots of meat.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, protein makes you feel satisfied.
Yeah.
So yeah, we eat lots of meat and then frozen fruit. I eat lots of fat. I mean, our family eats a lot of fat. So salad, here's an easy thing. Here's an easy tip. If you want something sweet, if that's your downfall, just make it. Instead of going to the store and buying Oreos and making it, you can make some kind of dessert at home. It takes more time, but the whole process of making your treat and then eating it is more satisfying, and you can control the ingredients a little bit. And it doesn't have the, food manufacturers benefit when we eat more of it. So they have perfected the bliss point. They have the perfect amount of salt and sugar and fat that makes us want to eat more. So, I mean, I could eat a sleeve of Oreos probably, but making cookies, and we've taught our kids, or any kind of dessert,
Yeah.
our kids love to bake, making the quote-unquote bad food, if that's how you look at it, just gives you more satisfaction
Interesting.
in eating it.
I would say one of our go-tos, like for if you got a sweet tooth, yogurt, non-fat Greek yogurt, blueberries, some walnuts, and a little bit of honey on there.
Come on.
Yeah. That you?
Do it all the time.
Except for it smells like.
Lynley hates the smell of
I
Greek
hate
yogurt.
the smell of Greek yogurt.
Yeah.
He'll come back into bed sometimes,
It
and
is
I'm like,
not a pre-sleep snack.
I'm like,
Otherwise,
I'm gonna
she
need
can't
you to,
sleep with
like,
the Greek yogurt on my breath.
walk away with that Greek yogurt real fast.
Yeah.
Or he gets in the car with it, or our kids, a couple of our kids will get in there, and I'm like,
Oh, I actually really love sardines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they smell
man.
awful.
Oh,
my
gosh.
gosh,
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah.
My family makes me eat them outside.
yeah, we're like, eat those outside, and the dogs go crazy. I'm like, anything the dogs are going crazy over, maybe you should be eating.
I was thinking just over the last 10, 12 years, because I do think about people that are listening and they're like, man, overwhelmed, where do I start? For us, our journey's been, we love to lift, and we know not everybody likes to lift weights. We started there, and then when we moved to where we are now, we have such a big neighborhood, the walking thing was introduced. And then our nutrition came in check, and then we've been dialing in on our sleep. And so these things have taken years for us to work on. So I just, going back to that principle, start with one thing and get that down.
Yeah,
And then when you're ready, once that's locked in, then move to the next thing.
that's good. Building blocks.
I would say that, so, because I like to work out, but I've changed programs a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done different workout classes. Then I did Orange Theory for a while. Now I'm really into Pure Barre. I really like it, like
Yeah.
more of a lean toning.
Yeah.
So you don't have to think, if I don't like one thing, that you're not going to like any of it.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
really
You're
good.
finding your thing, right? Like swimming.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, my brain is very exercised. I love reading. I
Yes.
absolutely
Yeah.
love reading. I could
Yep.
read for hours.
That's
And
not-
like going to a workout feels like it takes hours, but it was 30 minutes.
I don't think that was the point of this episode, but
I just felt like I needed to vote
just
for
want to
myself.
chime in. We love you still.
I'm cool too.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for being on the show.
Man, thanks for
this
having
is a
us.
really helpful conversation.
Yeah.
I know we'll probably talk about it on the way home about how we can meal prep better. But
Yeah.
Thanks for being here and for offering this. This is really helpful.
Thanks for having us.
The Glass House is executive produced by Angie Elkins, edited and engineered by Donnie Gordon with help from Nathan Howard. Show notes and production help from Nikki Ogden. Photography by Emily Bergeron and Bailey Watley. Recorded at the Lifeway Podcast Studio in Brentwood, Tennessee.